Well, my name is Sarah. Predak is my co-judge, and Ivana will be timekeeping. She's sitting over here. Can you all see her? Can you bang once? Can you hear that? You hear that. Without further ado, and there's a guy filming, but he's not, I know. I'd like to call upon our Prime Minister to open the case. Here.
Just a second. Come on. Sorry, just waiting for my timer to charge. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Now, what we see in Europe today is that the model of austerity is failing. We see that the economic model that we've been trying to apply to fix what the crisis has created in Europe has completely failed. Because it has not stimulated economic growth. It has not helped those countries that have gotten into the greatest debt deficit they could have imagined actually pay their debts. It has not helped these countries renew economic growth. It has not helped the population of the countries that were affected to actually, have a better living standard in any conceivable way. We see that the situation is growing on the ground for the people in countries such as Greece, in countries such as Romania, in countries such as Spain. It's going in Italy. It's actually become worse and worse. We see that there is great discontent at the level of the population because austerity has brought on really detrimental economic effects and really detrimental humanitarian effects as well. So what we're going to argue today is that essentially what we want to do is that the general bailout and the general help that comes from the better off countries in Europe and from the European Union in general has to go towards these countries in order to help them stimulate the economy and promote investment. Promote actual public investment that will stimulate consumption and actually revamp the economy and throw away the austerity model in which it forced these countries not to invest, not to pay people, to keep people in poverty, and to diminish the actual production and real income of the people in those countries. What we're going to argue is that austerity is ineffective and counterproductive. And secondly, we're also going to tell you how austerity is fundamentally inhumane and is something that goes against the way we should run a democracy. And then further, we're also going to talk about how fundamentally the model of investment is just economically way better, and it just doesn't make any sense that we haven't been using it so far. Okay, let's talk about how this is fundamentally ineffective. The purpose of austerity theoretically is a country goes into debt, so they have to pay a lot of money, they have and a lot of interest for loans they've been given out, and they don't have the economic output to actually have that money to be sustainable in the future. So the point of austerity should be, let's save money from public income, and by saving money, we will somehow gather up the money to have the power to lend in the future to pay back our debts. We see that this isn't happening. This isn't happening for a few very, very simple reasons. The first reason is when you have austerity, automatically you have less income in the hands of the people, therefore they have less purchasing power, therefore they buy less stuff, they buy less products, and ultimately what that means is the economy sells less, it produces less, jobs are lost, income is lost once more, and there is a downward spiral within the economy. And we say even if there is some sort of form of foreign capital that comes into countries that helps them not go down as much as possible, we see that what austerity incentivizes at an economic level is at best stagnation. What we say is even though with austerity we can see that public debt doesn't go up necessarily or is maybe contained, what we also see is that there's no improvement in terms of how the economic output of the country is. And therefore, it's impossible to actually reach that objective of having a balanced debt or balancing the budget surplus or anything like that, because there's simply no income coming in. What that does happen, and why it's counterproductive, is that essentially what we find out, we've managed to reach some sort of a target goal in terms of this balance we have in our budgets, so therefore we need more austerity in order to gather more money. Because there is no economic output, so there's not sufficient economic output to actually get more money in the state budget. So the solution, when you have austerity, usually is we need more austerity. And we've been hearing this from the heads of the EU, telling countries like Greece, and of the such, you have to implement more austerity. You have to be more severe about these things, and things will be better. But the fact of the matter is, you only go on this downward spiral. And I think that this is extremely bad because, A, like we've said, it doesn't reach the set goal of austerity, and secondly, it actually downwards the economy. But why that's extremely problematic, because this is inhumane. Because what it essentially is just to have some sort of a mechanistic solution to the problem of the problem of an economic stalemate, is lowering people's living standards, is getting people from the point in which they can afford to live to the point at which they can't. Lowering their income significantly just because they're employed in the public sector. And not only. What we see is that the grand effects of austerity have been massive unemployment, have been people not being able to afford what they could afford before, lowering the living standards, lowering the opportunities that they're able to offer their children. And we think that that's fundamentally inhumane. Because one of the basic tenets that we hold here in Western liberal democracies is also that we assure as a state a certain living standard for our citizens. We think that that's extremely important in most of the states in the West, which are also assumed to be states, welfare states that also take into consideration the well-being of their people. So we think that this type of mechanism of austerity, even if we would concede, at some point solve some sort of grievances in terms of debt and budget disbalance, what it does that at the sacrifice of the well-being of the people. And we think even if it would achieve those goals, it wouldn't be okay because it's inhumane like that. Please, sir.
Sir, where is the mechanism of how artificially making purchasing power higher is going to stimulate the economy and
that's exactly what I'm getting to. Yes, when you have public investment, when you maintain wages at a high level, you have more purchasing. More purchasing means more stuff is sold. More stuff is sold means more capital flows into the economy, and therefore there's more money for investment, for wages, and so on and so forth. That, at the same turn, stimulates the economy because generally production means growth. You cannot have production if you don't have capital. That comes from people having money. Furthermore, if you take even more money as a state and invest it through the public sector, what you are able to create then is to create new products, new jobs, and in this way, stimulate the economy because you have some sort of local production. And we say that what the chance that you have with public investment is to stimulate the economy, indeed artificially, as you say, but at the end of the day, what you will have real jobs with real people that consume real stuff. And therefore, the real economy goes up and actually raises up to a point where it actually can produce on its own. And we see that this has produced beneficial effects in the past. This is how we got out of the Great Depression. This worked. This isn't working. We have the example in the past where this has actually worked. Having investment, having people employed, having public investment. We think that this is what taken out of the Great Depression, and this is what's going to take Europe out of the crisis that's in now, not austerity, which we've already seen failing. Thank you.
Gentleman for his speech. I now ask the opposition leader to open the case for his side here. Here, the floor is for
Just a sec, my outsourced tablet is bugging. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the floor. Now, actually, what we have heard here from the side of proposition today is actually why austerity is bad. What we haven't heard in one single sec until about his last minute and a half of his speech, what are his alternatives, what he actually intends to promote as to getting the economy out of the gutter that it is in right now. We only heard why something is bad. Well, guess what? Every single medicine is bad. It doesn't mean that you don't need to take it. This is exactly what we're going to base our entire case today upon. We're going to go through each and every alternative that you have to austerity measures. We're going to explain to you how every single of those alternatives fail, and then we're going to go a little bit deeper into analysis, actually what austerity is, what austerity is being implemented right now and where it breaks down, and how austerity, if implemented properly, would get us out of the bushes. Now, actually, I have several points of contestation on the PM speech. One, they're actually claiming that we need bailouts to promote investment. This is the only single thing we actually get some sort of viable alternative. Well, guess what? Bailouts are termed investments. You do not get to have an investment unless you can apply and live up to the terms of the investment. If I give you money in order to restructure your debt, if I give you money in order for you to reform your agricultural reforms and whatnot, and you do not do it, then you're not a solvent guy who gets the credit, right? And if you cannot live up to it, that shrinks down the incentive of each and every investor of your that can offer money to your country. That is what de-incentivizes people to invest, and that is what causes you to call for a bailout in the first place or to implement austerity measures at one. Now, two, actually what they're claiming is a downward spiral. Well, thank you, Mr. Keynes. Well, actually they're saying less income, less purchasing power, less money in the public, no spending, which eventually leads to decay. But it's actually not true. Well, actually, you have money changes value on a daily basis. If your economy is like going down in the gutter, then it doesn't really matter how much money you have. Every single money you have will be worthless. The more money you have, the less worth it will have, right? Because if we continue printing money, if you continue, for instance, with the 13 wages, if we continue with enough social benefits on each and every level, we'll have more money in the economy. But the economy itself is failing. If the economy itself is failing, you have inflation. And the only viable solution that we have, that we can actually determine and discern from the PM speech, is printing more money, which actually leads to hyperinflation, which is exactly why certain currencies, if implemented today, would fall apart. For instance, drachma. Now, the second point goes to the fact that The second point goes to the fact that it is inhumane. Well, guess what? Around 9 out of 10 countries within the European Union that have implemented austerity are there because people have failed to pay up their taxes. People let themselves in the gutter. For instance, Greece failed to pay up around 60% of its tax for the year 2008. Then it entered recession, then it implemented austerity measures, and then they cried for bailout. That's what happened. The people are themselves to blame. We believe that austerity is the cold shower and the bitter medicine that they need to take in order to leave this place, right? And actually down again, to Mr. Keynes, the last point rebuttal, that not right now we'll have more money, it will be more public investment, will be more money in the economy, the money will somehow circle, and we have more domestic spending, which is basically the crux of the case. We believe, again, saying that that money will have far less purchasing power to trade with other countries, because if your own economy is decaying, the only way that you can output and be better and more productive is to have one of two things. And right now we get to our constructive. One is the better way, it's to increase production. Production doesn't really come only for capital. It comes from people's mindsets. It comes from the fact that people believe that they can actually change something. It comes from the fact that people believe that what they're doing right now isn't only for their 13th paycheck, but for some higher abstract notion of benefiting the entire country and thus helping themselves, right? We actually believe that this is where the state must interfere and implement austerities, because when people weigh their concrete benefits of a 13th paycheck or free social health care and whatnot, up to the abstract benefit of having a better nation, we believe that people will always choose concrete because people are basically selfish, and we actually accept this. People are selfish right down from the fact that we live in a capitalistic environment. Greed is what motivates the economy. And if greed motivates the economy and we give you some fluffed up, inflated money, then really you don't have anything. And that generates the entire different thing. It's called fake progress. People believe that their economy is out of the woods. When people believe that their economy is out of the woods because they have seemingly more spending power, people will start acting more recklessly. People will we have seen no mechanism from side or proposition how people will fail to revert to the previous mindsets where they thought that they could spend like hell. We believe that actually people are those who are going to get into a downward spiral mindset with their motion. We believe that needs to be showered far more better, right? Now, the entire thing with the bailout is it's a term condition. Why bailouts fail right now within the status quo is because people actually who are due to implement bailouts do it on a political level rather than an economic one. This is exactly what we call the entire case bitter medicine, right? Because you need to be economically productive, not politically productive. People who are there to implement productivity only strive for political power. Political power is stemming from votes, and votes are stemming from people who are actually going for their concrete needs. If I give you something, for instance, if I give you a 13th paycheck, I will win the next election, but then by the time I have to put myself in debt, for instance in Spain, under 6.2% GDP per year, I will have 10%. And the only thing that I can say to the investors in Central Europe is, oh well, we tried. And now we get to the simple fact, where is the money coming from? This is really important. Right now in Europe, you have two tiers of economy, and this is what people are failing to to realize. You have the central economy, which is basically industry-based. Germany, France, that sort of thing. Central Europe is actually the one giving bailouts to peripheral Europe, such as Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Greece, who have service-based economies. We believe that people who invest money in Greece need to see concrete outcomes of that investment. For instance, with Greece's debt per GDP percentage going down every single year, rather than feeling like they're throwing money away. This is exactly where investors will not arrive, because they will only see people with fluffed up, inflated money spending it in an economy which hasn't progressed, which actually is basically a carrot on a stick which fails to get to the carrot. Right? You have people in Central Europe less incentivized to invest, and you have people right now who have inflated money in a decaying economy in a downward spiral with no means of investment. But austerity measures set out a different signal, which is actually what we'll brush upon more in our second speech. But austerity measures are what signals the people outside and the investors that we're willing to change, that we're willing to adapt to the single fact that we want your money so much that we're willing to cut our 13 paychecks, we're willing to cut our social health care, we're willing to cut on some stuff like education and culture for the simple fact that we need to restructuralize two things: A, our debt, or B, our budget. Our debt restructuring goes through foreign investment, which actually this is a very viable signal. People see that we're cutting. Cutting does us no good, but we actually believe it's an evil we need to do. Then when they see that we're doing something that we don't really want to do, but we perceive is the best, is the least evil thing that we should do, then they see, okay, well, they're actually willing to leave this crisis. Let's give them some money and see what happens. And when they do invest, the economy betters, and that's what enters the cycle of spending. Then we can implement Keynesianism, and not right now, because you cannot actually increase domestic spending when you have nothing to spend. And for those reasons, we beg you to vote off. We beg you to vote off.
I thank the gentleman for his speech. We now move back to the proposition case for Vlad here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, what we're discussing today is obviously austerity. Proposition side believes that austerity is fundamentally wrong on a number of different reasons, and we've had a number of challenges from side opposition. I will first address their case, and I'll go back into my constructive. Now, basically they're saying that, well, there's this idea of fake money, and the idea that if you kind of try to invest money in something, that basically your money's value fluctuates. Which is true in a sense, but what we believe on side proposition is that there is a counterbalance to this. We believe that this money might be valued in a certain sense, but we believe that the outcome of investments that we can make can counterbalance this so-called inflation. The idea that, yes, my money might be worth less, but I will have more of it, so ergo I will have more money to spend. And I will get to this more on my own constructive points. And they've also told us, well, these ideas of Greece and people needing to see outcome for their investment, terms of investment. And we believe that this is fundamentally flawed. Why? Because the problem with austerity is that it does not promote growth of the economy, it just stagnates the debt. The public debt just stays the same, and we see no actual change within that economy. So we believe that this is unsound for investors to have such requirements of immediate outcome, because the outcome will only become visible once these changes actually take effect and once the economy starts growing. And that's the problem we see now fundamentally with austerity. It does not promote growth of any kind. And they've also said at the beginning of their speech that we will show you the alternatives. But that's not true. They haven't shown us any alternatives. Secondly, they've talked about, well, the people of Greece must suffer for what they've done because they've been cheating on their taxes. Two responses to this. One, we believe that it is fundamentally unfair to put people, citizens, in the situation in which they have to be fiscally responsible for the state. Of course, if people have money in their pocket, there's no reason for them to question what's going on, because they're not the people that have to have the mindset of what is going on economically in Greece. Should I be spending less or more, or is my state doing the correct thing? So we believe that it is fundamentally unsound to think that, oh no, the people of Greece have cheated on their taxes, so we must punish them. That is not true, because again, if there are no visible problems, then no one asks questions. This is not true of the people of Greece. This is true of people anywhere. No, thank you. And secondly, they're talking about as if Greece's financial situations and other financial situations within European Union and around the world are directly the fault of the people, which is false. Because we have seen that Greece has been fiscally irresponsible. We believe that Greece's political class has done a lot of bad things in the term of an economy and is completely beside what would actually be called economic growth, and that is why Greece in this situation. Not because people didn't pay their taxes per se, because Greece has been fundamentally fiscally irresponsible. We believe that austerity measures do not solve this fundamental problem. No thank. Okay. I'll take closing.
Sir, voting for decades for populistic policies and not realizing that you cannot live artificially on artificial growth for decades, how is that not responsibility, political responsibility of the people who voted for this politician?
Okay, thank you. Again, I go back to my previous point. People should not be the ones that have to question the politics of the state in that way. People should vote for the platforms they see best fit them, but people should not be the ones that have to, like, not even the great powers could have foreseen the great crisis. So what power has the person on the street to actually foresee what happens and to vote for people that, oh no, we're clearly heading for a train wreck, let's vote for someone else that will give us less because I can feel that it's coming. This is not how any individual citizen of any country functions, and we can expect no one to have the foresight to believe that they must be punished for their lack of economical vision. We believe that this is purely unsound. Now, going back into our own substantive, what are major cruxes? One, that fundamentally austerity is inefficient, and we haven't really heard anything on that measure. We've just heard that, well, austerity can be efficient on their side if it is applied properly. We haven't heard what this proper application of austerity is that can work. Secondly, we talked about how it's inhumane. They tried to tackle this in their own substantive by talking about the people of Greece and their need to be punished, but I think that there is no need to further discuss this. And on the third point of investment, and they've attacked us saying that, well, our solution that we haven't really explained enough, so I will get to that right now. The fundamental thing about investment is, and the fundamental problem with austerity is, that I've said before and I will say it again, it does not promote growth. What does growth actually mean? Well, my previous speaker touched upon this by having more money in the pocket. Now, what this fundamentally means is, in order for an economy to grow, people have to be spending money for services or products. That creates demand. In order to satisfy that demand, people have to create other products, more products, or have to create jobs because that demand exists. We believe that fundamentally, people that live under austerity measures, one, are generally, well, let's say, depressed, and are not in the habit of spending a lot of money. But secondly, we believe that actually this promotes a culture of defensive spending. And we believe even if people would have money to spend on certain products and services because they are fearful of having no money at all to live day by day, they clearly won't be spending any money on other products and services. And we see that fundamentally society is shoehorned into a situation in which it will only spend money on fundamental basis. But that unfortunately is not enough to make an economy grow and boom and be stimulated. We need these people to start spending their money in order to create demand, in order for someone to actually create the supply. And through this investment, we believe that this is what actually solves the problem. Well, they say, but you're actually just making fake money. But with this fake money, in the short term, yes, you can actually say that this is actually fake money. But in the long term, once this investment actually starts to become productive, and we actually see new products and services being given to the people who are willing to spend money, and we see investors that actually see that financial situation of, oh, well, yeah, Greece is pretty bad off and other countries as well. But the people are spending money. And if the people are spending money, that gives investors a reason to go to that place in order to create products and services and jobs, in order for people to spend that money. And again, the state always benefits from this because companies pay taxes, because people pay for their services, and this in turn creates more opportunities. Fundamental problem with austerity is it does not create any of this. It does not create an incentivized medium in which investors or people generally feel that they can spend money, one. And secondly, that investors see that money is not being spent, so they have no reason to go and try to create services that can actually attain money from the people. This is the fundamental crux of our case. We believe that having money within the economy creates, let's say, a domino effect in the long term of actually creating a boominger economy than no economy. That's the problem. And we've seen no analysis from side opposition on why austerity can function. Yes, we concede austerity is great for just stagnating the debt at best. But we see that in no way austerity actually leads to a better outcome. Of course, it might be muddy in the beginning with no austerity measures at all, but long-term solution, we believe that we have to get people spending because greed is good. Thank you.
Roman, the last speaker first half for opposition.
Okay? So what we basically heard from opening government is one story, which is Keynes will work and this doesn't. What we perceive this is a far more complex problem than on a strictly abstract theoretical notion that Keynes and completely absolute Keynes will work and that this doesn't work at all. We believe that it is a far more complex reality than that. And we will address it on several levels. Firstly, we will address their notion that austerity is completely failed and that it is completely something that should be thrown away and put in economical history. Secondly, we will address political implications of this, and that is the point where we take the debate forward, and then which we will talk about the leverages and punishments for the countries who are completely politically irresponsible, and how this in the long term will benefit not only Greece, Italy, Portugal, etc., but also Europe. And thirdly, we will tackle the issue of who will basically get mad if this gets implemented. And we believe that a lot more people will get mad because these countries will not be punished, and these people whose money, whose taxpayers' money, are we now going to invest somewhere else will feel much more frustrated, which will create much more harm to Europe than in status quo. But before that, it is quite fair for us to tackle once again the story of the opening government. The nature of austerity, and that is the four elements of austerity that we are constantly here advocating. One, it is a long-term solution. It is not enough for us to say it's not working for a year or a year and a half and to completely say that it's an economical fallacy. It is a long-term solution. Secondly, we believe that it is a structural solution, and that's the important part here. We believe that Keynes, as much as sometimes it works, as much as it worked from the 29th to the 33rd, and after that, perhaps to some extent, but not because of theoretics, but because of war. But that's differently. That's another question right now. The point is, structural changes has to be implemented for austerity. Why is this important? Because structural changes are usually long-term changes and are good for a society in the long-term basis. Okay? Why is that important? Because when you don't have when you don't have too much spending, and you get to the position of austerity because you have too much spending, so these countries have to learn to spend less. You learn to spend less in the future. Structurally, you prevent yourself from spending more in the future. Therefore, and this is important, politicians who are completely reckless in the future will not be able structurally to spend much as these people did today. We believe that's very important. Third element of austerity, which is important for us, is signaling. John Rich already briefly explained how this is signaling to investors that we are safe. Secondly, which is also important, this is signal to financial markets. Our bonds, our government bonds, will be much more, will worth much more if we have a commitment that we will do in the long run what is good for our economy and not just in the short run. Why is this important? Because government bonds, if investors buy them, will provide extra money to our budget and are the most direct way of doing so. Now, the fourth element, which is very important, which wasn't at all cleared by the opening government, is the leverage element. Ladies and gentlemen, we need leverage towards people, towards nations, towards countries in the European Union that are not financially disciplined. We need this leverage in order to prevent the moral hazard of other countries doing the same. We don't see this leverage here. Now, what we are forgetting here from a political economic standpoint is that this austerity is basically a sort of a preposition for a bailout. We are certainly going to have to give money to these countries, right? We have to do it because we have to save the euro. And that's what we are agreeing here about. But the problem with your case is that you are not giving anything, they are not feeling the consequences of their actions to any extent whatsoever, which we believe that they should feel, the political consequences of irresponsibility. And why is this important? Because of the moral hazard, because not a single government in Europe will be afraid of being financially completely irrational because it has no punishment behind it. For example, imagine if you are Prime Minister of Portugal and you are this close to have to be bailed out. You will not take your chance and lose the election with some austerity measures. You will push your country to the brink because you know that the European Union countries will come in and invest some more in your country. And you will have even more money in the country and no one will blame you for anything. And this is the leverage that we lose on their side and that we have on our side. And now, since we've tackled these issues, we would like to push the debate forward. And here is where we push it forward. We push it forward on a political level. We believe that right-wingers parties in Greece and also in Western countries, which is very important, important here, are the ones who will profit from this, which will further harm the entire Europe and not just people from Greece. But before that, a brief explanation. We believe that Greek citizens and Italian citizens, etc., are absolutely responsible for their choices politically, because they have to punish their politicians when they see that they are wrong. What we see today, even though they see that their politicians brought them economic hell, they still vote for populist parties. And that's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. They deserve to get irrational politics consequences because they are acting irrationally. Therefore, we don't want a lot of democracy right now. We need economical and political mechanism which will ensure this. Go ahead.
But how people who like in times to prosper bought houses in Spain could have known that they will produce housing bubbles? They are just average citizens.
But look at what's going on right now. They know who is the one to blame, and who are they voting for? In Greece, they are voting for the extreme left or the extreme right. So the people are completely irrational, and they are not punishing their politicians at all. What we believe is that they will do this to an even lesser extent by their plan. And why? Here's like the two stakeholder groups here. In Greece, you have the extreme right wing like the Golden Dawn. We believe that this will be extremely bad for the people from the middle. Middle politics will tend to be more right. Why? Because people will say, okay, maybe they are right, these austerity measures were completely stereotypical and wrong, and therefore the extreme right was right, and therefore why not even support them? But more importantly, in Western Europe, and that's the important stakeholder here, in Finland we have true Finns that are garnering more support. In Netherlands we have Geert Wilders who's garnering more support. In other countries such as Denmark we have right-wingers who are garnering support on one policy issue, and that is, let's not give money to lazy Greeks. Let's not give our taxpayer money to these countries who are to blame for the crisis of debt. We believe that this problem will be further exacerbated by their case because the people in Finland, Germany and other countries will feel completely betrayed, and therefore will hate even more and have even more stereotypes towards these countries, towards the people from these countries, which will further on harm the level of cooperation in the European Union, which is crucial in these times. For all these reasons, we beg you not to address this debate so simplistically.
I thank that gentleman for his speech. We now move on to the first speaker of the second half of the floor to Ia.
Okay, madam, we're going to give you like a clear framing. Why? The first government explained you a real great theoretical model. However, we're going to explain you why, especially in the European Union, we have this problem and why it is good to boost the production in the European Union as it is. And talking about competitiveness, why the fact that those economies are usually based on service make it even worse for preventing austerity measures. But first, a couple points of rebuttal. First point of rebuttal is about austerity. They said we need structural solution. However, we don't see, and somehow people, when they see that they have austerity measures, they're going to learn in fast. However, we don't see now in reality this happening. We had a hyperinflation. We had big problems that people had in the past. But however, they haven't learned anything. People have like short-term memory usually, and they forgot what's happening. Just because you're going to have some austerity measures doesn't mean that they're going to remember that and later think about the production. We have problem with hyperproduction in the past. We have it now. So basically, they're not solving that. Second, about consequences. So really, it's a really big problem because first of all, if you don't have austerity, you still have consequences. For example, people who like bought their houses, they cannot pay back their credits, they usually lose their houses. So they have consequences. So they see in their society that there are consequences for overspending. So when they can receive money, they are much likely to perceive that they cannot spend it. Furthermore, we can have some check and balancing system. We don't need just to give them bailout and say, oh, you spend whatever you do. You can send them bailouts for certain branches of economy, as they are going to send bailouts to Spanish banks only. So basically, you don't need just to give them the money to politicians and do what they want. Experts can decide what to do with certain branches of economy. We believe it's a big problem. Furthermore, about politicians, we believe it's a really, really big problem. Because all the problems and examples that Joel explained are really great examples. But what about those examples? They're happening in status quo when you have austerity measures. Why? Because now Greeks are voting for golden loan. Now we have Germanophobia in Greece and Greekophobia in Germany and vice versa. We believe it's a big problem. It won't be more if we didn't have austerity measures. Why? Because those people wouldn't be pissed off in Greece, and then they wouldn't have those anti-Germany. And on the other hand, they will be even more likely to cooperate. Once they are more likely to cooperate, German citizens see that, and they are also more likely to cooperate. That means that you have less tensions actually inside the European Union. So their case is counterintuitive. And furthermore, why it is bad for big countries? Why we have problems in Europe, in other countries like in Finland and Germany? Because, for example, in Spain, unemployment is about 25% between youth, and we believe this problem. That's why lots of people from Spain, young people, are going to Germany, going to other countries. They are lowering the wage in those countries, and that's why those citizens are really, really mad at them. And that's why. Because in order to be competitive with Spanish workers, they need to work for less money. We believe this is a big problem. That's why they blame the other countries who are like lazy Gurks, Madam Speaker, and that's why they're voting for more extreme right or extreme wing countries. So basically, we don't see that it is going to be changed. Those problems are going to be bigger. They're on the contrary going to be small. Okay, now my extension. No, before that, later. First of all, why in this framework? The first government explains the theoretical model, Keynes, and everything that happened. But let's see in which world are we living now. We're living in a world of free market. In order to survive in free market, you need to be competitive enough. That means that you cannot just don't spend anything and everything, because your economy won't be strong enough. If you are weak, then you cannot don't have anything to offer. And if you are sending all the money only to pay off your debt, you cannot produce anything. You cannot invest in your new technologies. You cannot invest in new products and everything else. We believe it's a big problem. This means that other countries are less competitive. Because they're less competitive, they can less likely going to succeed. Because German companies can come, for example, in Spain and the other countries. And on the contrary, those Spanish companies, for example, cannot come as easily in Germany because they're not as much competitive. We believe, no, sir. We believe it's a big problem, and that's why they are losing. Furthermore, is that those service-based economies. That's why. Because when you have austerity measures, in 100% of cases you have social unrest. You have social unrest in Greece, you have social unrest in Spain, in Portugal, and everything else. So basically, when are really people going to come to service-based economy, like to hotels, to seasides, and the other things, when they know that they have social unrest? They are less likely to come. This means that even the biggest part of their of money that those economies get is going to be even less and less. Why? Because people don't like to go to the countries where there is social unrest. That's why those countries are the losers. And we believe that's a problem. If they had money to invest, first of all, there wouldn't be that much social unrest. There would be big social unrest at all, and that means that people would more come, and those service-based economies would earn more on their services. Secondly of all, they could boost the other branches like industry and everything else, which will make them more competitive. And the free market, as I explained before that, competitiveness is even more important. I'm going to go about morality, but before that, okay.
Yeah. How are you going to industrialize Greece? Just by giving larger pensions and larger social givings, partial investments. It's not investments.
Yeah, but it's not just giving a larger welfare and everything. Even though we believe it's that important, I'm going to explain it in my second part of the extension. But you can also give the bailout money for some industrial branches. You can give them like the banking, just bailouts, for example, just banking sector. You can help certain branches of industry. You don't need just to give all money to the country. Say do what they want. We don't support only that. But we still believe that it is better. Why? Because of the morality, and this we believe that one really important case of the first proposition is because those people are guilty for that. As I said in my POI, I don't see that some basic citizen living in Spain actually could know that just buying house would produce housing bubble. He couldn't understand it. It was really complicated for me. I needed 2 hours to understand how housing bubble works. And that means we don't believe that even a basic citizen who is not expert in economy who can be said, oh, you're guilty because you bought houses. Why? They didn't buy houses where they didn't have enough money. They had enough money. The economy wasn't prosperous. But even economical experts couldn't predict that it's going to happen that way. We believe it's a big problem. And that's why we don't see that those people are guilty. Furthermore, we don't see that citizens of Greece are guilty because their government, together with Goldman Sachs, hide the statistics and everything so they can join the euro. They didn't know that. And that's why they cannot say you are guilty. And who are you blaming? You're blaming the people who are poor. You're blaming the older people. You're cutting their spendings, and they're not the guilty one. They're not the one who produced those things. That's why we believe it's even unfair. So even if you give just money, just to welfare and the other things, we will even that is better than than having all austerity measures. Okay, so what we brought you as a second government today, we brought you that, especially in this context when we have free market and service-based economy, it is important to be competitive, and it's important not to have social unrest that are made, but oh god, and that is not immoral. So propose.
Thank you for the floor. Madam Speaker, Greece is not the US after the Great Depression, after the World Wars. Keynesian models must be put in a context in order for them to work. You can't just say, give them more money, they will spend, the economy will boom, we will industrialize Greece. There are several problems in this concrete context why this is not going to work. First, we seem to have a basic misunderstanding of what austerity really is. It means that the social givings and the pensions and the healthcare and the public system and public jobs, the wages are going to be cut. By reversing the austerity measures, by giving them more money and making more public spending, this is not some capital investment. This is not an investment that actually booms the economy. It is an investment that creates short-term spending. What does short-term spending mean? They are optimistic. They think like they are going to have more money, so they are going to boom their economy. No, they are going to buy imported products, and they are going to have inflation in their country, like the first opposition said. But also, what is more the problem is this. Money getting is actually partial. It is not the accumulated money capital that can actually be invested in something. It is only a money that can be spent, but without the industry and without the already some competitive market where you can spend that money, you don't see how is that boom going to happen. Also, from the second government, we have this idea that markets need to be competitive, and they are like trying to say at the same time that we need to prioritize services in these countries because it is a status quo, but also we need to industrialize. Well, we must make a choice, and we must actually know what our goal is. We don't think that these countries can be really competitive in today's world only with services. We don't live in a post-industrialized world. Maybe Switzerland can have services and banks. We believe that these economies must have real industries, and we don't think that actually just giving them more money to spend on their services is going to help them create more real growth. More real growth, because reversing the austerity measures does not mean real investment. Also, what is also the problem, the moral hazard with investment. When you have a money that you haven't really earned and that you don't really deserve, and don't forget, you're not really saving this money, because saving money means earning money and then putting it aside. Greece is not earning money so it can save it. It is only lowering the deficit of money they already don't have. So this is not a real saving in the matter of like we earn the money, now we don't want to spend it. It is your obligation to pay off some debt. So we think that actually it is not the same in the Keynesian way of thinking, but it is actually just decreasing the deficit. We believe that the countries have an obligation to decrease the deficit also because of the stability of the financial markets, because we want them to pay off their debt, because we want countries to actually be obligated to pay off their debt and not just say, well, it doesn't matter, we made a mistake. Yes?
But the problem is that there is no foreseeable future in which these countries can actually pay off their debt except by chipping it away 1% at a time over a long span of years. This is not something that is feasibly can happen in your model.
What can happen is that we need to have real investment with real money in order to make Greece grow. This is not what you are going to do if you reverse austerity measures, and what you guys are trying to do is make make things even worse because you are going to actually create inflation and you are going to decrease the possibility that Greece is going to pay off its debt because it is going to spend more on its state. And simply saying that we will flush the money in Greece, like, okay, we'll reverse the austerity measures, we'll also invest in industry, we'll give them, like we have endless amounts of money, but we don't. We have already spent much money on bailouts and we have a general financial crisis. It is not only Greece that is in problem, we have also other states. We don't believe we have endless amounts of money we can spend only on Greece, and it creates great resentment in countries like Germany and France, but I will going to speak of that in my extension. First thing, we're going to expand on the political level. Why is this so bad for the politics? And we're going first to say, and what I said in my POI, the decades of populistic policy. How it works? Well, you simply promise people jobs. What happened in Greece and what happened in these countries that the Western countries don't have is that they actually, on elections, always promise people that they're going to get jobs in public service, that they are going to get big welfare service. Why is it bad? Well, because people perceive it as something that is safe, as something they can never lose. In public service, you don't have real competitiveness. You don't have real. You don't have real. Competition. What we think happened is actually people went the easy way out. They chose to vote for policies for decades that are actually not economically efficient, that actually put them in the situation they are in now. And what are you doing with your model? You're confirming this situation and you're saying, okay, you were not wrong. We're going to reverse austerity measures. We are going to again increase the level of public spending. And actually, the whole idea that IMF and all the financial institutions, when giving bailouts, things they make that are conditions for bailouts are actually the change of this political behavior. We need Greek people to realize, and Italian people, that they cannot live off the state, that they cannot continue with this behavior. What are you saying with reversing this austerity is that actually these models can somehow work and that these kinds of government spending can actually work. We must break this political culture of these countries. We must break the idea that by offering people jobs and by offering people big welfare that is not actually justified in some and that doesn't have some economical grounds, they can win votes. This is what is happening now. And what you are going to do with proposing this measure is that you are going to say that Syriza was right and that the Golden Dome was right. We don't want to say that they're right because they are not. We don't think that the economical ideas of Keynesianism and of big public spending is something that is going to make Greece and Italy better off. But also, what is this creating in the European Union, also in the political sense, is the resentment that is created in Germany and Greece. We believe that there was not enough focus in this debate on that. Because it is not only about punishing those who did wrong, it is also about rewarding those who did well. Rewarding those who did well. Because the Germany and France have been industrialized, and we don't think that the German and French people should give big amounts of money in order to subsidize countries that have not behaved very well. Why? Because they worked that way. Because they actually created economical competitiveness, because they worked harder, because they invested in more economically efficient ways. We want this economical behavior to be rewarded, and we want the economical behavior of Greece, Italy, and similar countries to be punished. We think that this is going to create a big political moral hazard in the European Union, so we beg you to oppose this motion.
sum up this debate with two questions. The first one is, does the austerity boost the economic growth or it doesn't boost the economic growth? I'm going to show you how it doesn't on the long term. And the second point, I'm going to show you how the present time is actually the main time and the time that we're debating, and to show you why today it is not the austerity measures that are good in the time of economic crisis. But before that, I have to rebuttal what my previous speaker was talking about. So the first one is about the Golden Dawn and the whole extremist parties in Greece and the other countries. But the thing is that the Golden Dawn only rises where there are austerity measures. Why? Because the people have less salaries, there are socialist tensions, and that is the time where people are irrational, cannot rational things in the right way, and that is the time where they go extreme and they go and vote for the Golden Dawn and for other extremist parties. The next one is about more public spending, and that will it is just short-term spending. No, it is like not good in the long term. But actually, when people have more money, they spend more and they actually buy more products. And that is what the economy is. What drives the economy. When you have money, you go and buy some new things, some new products, and when millions of people have money, they go and buy million products, and they're actually the small companies and the big companies have something to sell, and they have profit, and they gain that profit, and they actually they can invest that in new technology and stay competitive. I'm going to show you how the competition is the main thing in today's world. The second thing is about creating the atmosphere about the whole spending. And this is what the first opposition was talking about. They said that you need to create the atmosphere so the investment to actually work. But actually, that is the thing. When you have high wages, when you have high welfare and people have high wages, actually that is the creation of atmosphere. Why? Because then they have something to invest. They have money to open shops, to open some new things, and that is actually what drives the economy. As I previously said, the small things, when people have incentive to create new things and new shops. No, right? And the third thing is the whole opposition is talking about the whole vanillization of the model and of the thing that the government is talking about. No, they say that there will be no discipline, that the politicians will use that money to buy votes and for such like this. But actually, this is not true. Why? Because we believe that there is a strategy when the country is in financial crisis. Then the whole experts gather together and they make strategies and they make something that will be a more disciplined spending. So you invest, but you do not invest in something that will not, something you will not able to gather back. So you actually have a strong impact when you have economic crisis. No, and you receive austerity measures. Okay, so the first flashpoint. So. What we all agree is that Greece do not have money, so they have a lot of debt and they do not have money. And when you have austerity measures, then you actually do not invest in creating new jobs, in creating something that you can gather taxes from. So actually, we all agree that they need money from the side. So what you actually need in that time, you need investments, you need foreign investments and such. So, but when you have, this is when they come and say. When investors give money to Greece, Spain, Italy, and Portugal, they want to see real effects. But when you have austerity measures, then everything you do is you take credits from some foreign country or some foreign investment, and you use it to pay debt that you already have. So actually, everything you do, you take money from one guy and give it to the other one, but you still own someone else. No, but you do not invest and you cannot gain economic growth. Why? Because when to gain economic growth, you need to have more jobs and more bigger wages, so you can have taxes from. So actually, but this is actually why investors do not want to come to Greece, to Italy, to Spain, and some other countries. Why? But when you do not have economic growth, as I've shown, actually the credit rating is going down of your country. And actually, when you gather money, then you have more interest to pay. So you just take money from the one side and give it to the other side. This is actually why the investors do not want to come. This is actually why the austerity measures do not work in Greece and the other economies. Yes.
The most attractive destination for investors worldwide are the ones who don't have like 70% budget on social spending. these countries are the ones that get investment money, not the countries that have a lot of such things. Therefore, austerity is in the long run good for investment, for investments in Greece, etc.
Okay, I disagree with that. Okay, so why the present time is actually why these austerity measures do not work and why do we need investment? Because of the whole situation of free market. Just a second. Okay, so when you have free market, as we have in the eurozone, in the European Union, actually, what is the main thing why some companies fail and the other companies are so successful? Is because of the competitivity. So when you have profit, you use that profit to invest in new technologies, to invest in opening new jobs, and and making more and more products so you can spend. So when you have austerity measures, then that profit that you gain, you do not use it to invest in the new technology. You do not use it to invest in new technology. Then someone invests in that area that you do not invest in. So then you lose race from the someone who actually is terribly then someone gained profit on that area that you did not invest in. So actually, then you lose the race, and then you actually lose competitivity. So actually, you have to decrease the spending on some other level. So then you decrease salaries and wages, and then you have to cut off some jobs. And this is actually why the Greece and the other countries that have or do not have industry fail when it comes to Germany and some other countries. Why? Because German companies have money to invest and have money to invest in new technologies and to stay competitive. And the Spanish industry, when it uses austerity measures, do not invest. Then they are just paying their debt that we have. So actually, because of all of the things, I beg you to propose this motion and to reverse austerity measures.
Okay, as a summation speaker from the side of the opposition, I see this debate in two major clashes. One is whether is this the responsibility of the people and should they suffer the consequences? And second one is basically what are these consequences and are they going to be better off with the bailout option or the austerity measures model? Now to my first clash, whether people are those people, Greek people, Portuguese people, Romanian people guilty for all the debt their country got in or not? We think that from the side of the government, we heard how ordinary people don't really know much about their country's debt and don't really know much about this economical bubble that Ilya talked about. They don't really know how we got into the economical crisis. From the side of the opposition, we strongly disagree with that. Why? Because we saw the economical crisis in Greece didn't really happen in a year or in 6 months. It was something that lasted for years. It lasted for decades. We saw this country getting into much deeper debt for decades, and they knew that. It's something that we all know. We know in what debt our country is. It's something that it gets through the media and political campaigns. It gets through the newspaper every day. We do read about our country's debt, and it's something that we decide on. And if we see that the government we chose is not really being responsible enough about this debt, we simply don't choose that government in the next elections. But they didn't do that. They still followed the populistic parties. They still wanted jobs in public services. They still wanted to live as if there's no debt at all. They still wanted major salaries. They still wanted more money to spend than they actually had. And we think this is something most of the people who are politically engaged knew about. So we do think that this, as the government said, but we don't agree with that, inhumane inhumane measures that are being like austerity measures is something that is adequate punishment for those people and is something they should suffer in order not to behave in that way in the future. So we think, yes, it's people's responsibility when they choose those governments. But before I...
So basically, people should have thought, oh, this is way too good to be true, so I should clearly question what is going on. Nowhere in the world would this happen.
Okay. The thing is that, you're not going to say, okay, I want less salary, but if you see that your country is being irresponsible economically, you want something to change, because obviously you're not going to be able to live forever on the state's back. You're not always going to be able to take credits for your salary. Obviously, the state is not going to be economically sustainable in the future. If not for you, it's not going to be sustainable for your children, for your next generations. And we think that's something that people do have in mind when they vote. But they just simply took the easy way out and didn't really want to work as much as, I don't know, people in Germany or people where there's no economic crisis just like that hit Greece as hard. Now to the point of the consequences, which I think afterwards, which I think it's majorly it's about 2 points: political consequences and economical consequences. Now to the political one. So from the side of the opposition, we showed you how this is going to be bad if we take the bailout option. This is going to be bad for the Greek people. Why? Because we're going to show them how we're going to show them that politically, yes, those extremist parties were right. Yes, the Euroscepticism was justified. Yes, austerity measures are bad. And we think this is something that will actually even more firmly position those parties on the political stage of Greece. But we also showed you how Greek middle parties that are not as extremistic, we got that from the first opposition, are going to tend to go more right than they would usually do, because they're going to see how these also going to be confirmed that austerity measures were bad, and yes, maybe I should go more right. No, thank you. But also, why politically this is bad for the other countries and parties in other countries? Because we already have this stigma on the Greek people. We already have this stigma on people that are being bailouted and that have austerity measures in their countries. They're already perceived as lazy people. They're already perceived as somebody who doesn't really want to work as much as they do. So we think that even in those countries, also extremistic parties are going to be flourishing. Why? Because now those people will still have to pay even more out of their taxes to get Greece, Portugal, Italy out of the crisis. And we think this is something really harmful for those parties as well. But before I continue.
If it is so transparent, those economical things to the people, how the Greek government could lie about public debt in order to come into Eurozone?
We think that still, yes, they lied, but again, we all know that they lied. So those people also know they lied, but they're still doing it, and they're still voting for those parties. And we think this is something that is people's responsibility. Now to the economical consequences, and this is the clash that happened on the first first part of the table. So what we got from the first proposition is that how this, if we give them money, there's going to be more spending, and now all of a sudden, magically, this is going to be like the industry is going to flourish because people will need more stuff, so they will produce more stuff, and we all know this generic stuff. But what's the problem with it? Is that we showed you how there's going to be inflation. Why is inflation bad if you just pump money in it? Why? Because the prices are going to get higher, and like the money worth is going to get lesser. And although people will have money, they're not going to be able to spend as much as if the economy naturally recovered, and as if the economy wasn't artificially just given money and the capital. We think that first of all, people are selfish, and people do live in this capitalistic world, and people will still just, when they get the money, just spend it like this on some luxurious stuff, and it's not going to boost the industry and the economy as we all want to. So we think that in the long term, austerity measures, although not perfect, are going to be more beneficial and are going to boost the economy and the industry more than the bailout model that we're seeing. Now, for all the harms that we show you, we think the bailout model is going to harm those countries even more, so we beg you to oppose.